For the most part, Japan has been deemed as one of the most safest countries on the planet. They have a fascinating low crime rate compared to the United States. However, all of that changed when in the 1980s, the unimaginable happened that will forever change Japan's reputation. Katsuhisa Ezaki was the CEO of a candy company named Ezaki Glico. They were known for selling the candy we see today, such as Pocky sticks, and it was a very popular chocolate stick. It all started March 18, 1984, when two masked men kidnapped the 42-year-old CEO. Ezaki would be spending the day with his family. He had a wife, 3 children, and also lived with his mother, who lived next door to him on the property. This wasn't an ordinary property. It was a mansion with high-tech security measures in play for him and his family's safety. The home was in a hill, and it ran for 650 square meters. Just in case, Ezaki left the key under the mat at his mother's residence. He didn't really worry since his high-tech security cameras monitor all angles of his home. And then, all of a sudden, with rain pouring, 2 masked men scaled the brick wall and managed to climb over on a stepladder. A third man awaited outside while his accomplices finished the job. With rifles and guns in hand, they burst through the front door and tied Ezaki's mother and taped her mouth shut. The 2 masked men then discovered the key to Ezaki's home, disconnected the power, and began to ambush his place. Ezaki was upstairs bathing, not knowing what was awaiting for him downstairs. Ezaki's wife and daughter were caught by surprise and offered the masked men money for their lives. The men rejected the offer and tied both her and her daughter up. They made their way into the bathroom and grabbed Ezaki and forced him out of the mansion. By now, the police were notified due to the phone cords being cut. By now, the kidnappers were long gone with Ezaki. The next day, at approximately 1:15 in the morning, the Glico Director of Human Resources got a call notifying him of the abduction. The abductors instructed him to go to a location, and when they got there, there was a brown envelope waiting for him. The note instructed him to pay a $1 billion yen ransom in cash and 100 kilograms of gold put into a white car. Investigators began to believe it was more than just a random kidnapping because Ezaki Glico's company stocks suddenly dropped from 750 yen to 630. It appeared that Katsuhisa Ezaki had more enemies than they expected. After 3 days of being blinded, handcuffed, and taped, Ezaki managed to escape his perpetrators after being left alone for 15 hours. It wasn't an easy escape for Ezaki because he recalled the doors not looking like actual doors. He said he saw a peak of light and kicked until he was finally freed. He frantically ran away and called the police at a Japan railway center. Ezaki arrived very dehydrated and was understandably shaken up by the ordeal. He phoned his family first and was later questioned by police. He wasn't very forthcoming about his abduction and told the police he just wanted to go home and that the case was over. The same night, the media caught wind of his return and did a press conference. Ezaki explained he didn't see his captors, being that he was blindfolded the whole time and he had no idea who would have wanted to do this to him. Ezaki thought the worst part of his nightmare was over, until only a month later, the attacks against the company continued. On April 10, 1984, outside of the Glico headquarters, several vehicles were destroyed by arson and the surrounding area was torched. The mystery men taunted the police and left letters in detail explaining how they committed their crimes in newspapers they sent across Japan. They explained how their getaway car was gray and how they purchased food from a local supermarket. They ended the note with, "Should we kidnap the head of prefectural police? Signed, the monster with 21 faces." The gang taunted them for weeks on end until one of their crimes became more alarming. On May 10, 1984, they stated that they laced the Glico candy with potassium cyanide poisoning. This caused grocery stores to have to pull the candy off the shelves, resulting in over $20 million in losses and laying off over 400 workers. The Glico Ezaki company reputation had been tarnished. The police didn't have much leads until security footage captured a man who seemingly put Glico products on the store's shelf. The man wore a baseball hat so he couldn't be identified. The candy was pulled from the shelf and was tested, and it came to be that the man had lied. None of the candy had been laced with cyanide poisoning, as the group had claimed. They further teased police, penning a note saying, "Dear stupid police officers, don't lie. All crimes begin with a lie, as we say in Japan. Don't you know that? You seem to be at a loss." Their theatrical tricks and letters captivated Japan and put them in fear all at once. They would demand large amounts of cash from the Glico company, but would never collect when disguised police officers showed up. They would continue to taunt the police, saying how they knew that the police were in disguise the whole time. Finally, the monster with 21 faces decided to leave the Glico company alone, saying how he's held his head low enough and that they forgive him. They then bragged about how they were going to go global and torture other candy companies. However, they told the police that if they gave them 50 million yen, they would stop torturing more candy companies. When police showed up disguised, they saw a couple of mysterious men, but one stood out in particular. He had a hunting, silent gaze like a fox, and he looked like a salary worker, dressed like a gangster, wearing flashy clothes like an amateur Yakuza style. They dubbed him as the Fox-Eyed Man. This man watched the cashier close, and although he was suspicious, investigators didn't want to jump the gun and accuse him and blow the whole thing up. Despite following the man around, he managed to evade the police by disappearing into a large crowd. Police believe the Fox-Eyed Man was placed there as a distraction. The next day, the man wrote yet another letter saying, "You thought you could fool us, dressing your nice businessman's blue suit, acting like salarymen. We do not recall a case in which criminals have made such a fool of the police." After moving on from the Glico company, they set their sights on another company called Marinaga. They demanded 400,000 yen, but the company refused. In October of that year, they wrote a letter to the moms of Japan saying how they again put cyanide in the Morinaga candy. Just like the Glico company, the candy was pulled from shelves. The candy was tested, only this time, the candy did test positive for cyanide, unlike the Glico company. Morinaga stocks had plummeted as a result. If that wasn't enough, the man with 21 faces threatened supermarkets, stating that if they didn't stop selling Morinaga candy in the stores, they would send more boxes of unlabeled poisoned candy. The police would stake out supermarkets and swarm the areas, but no luck. They were, however, able to trace the letters to a typewriter. Eventually, every lead got cold and the mockery continued. They started demanding money from more and more candy companies, one for 100 million yen and the other for 50 million yen. The straw that broke the camel's back was in August of 1985, 1 year later, when Shoji Yamamoto unalived himself by dousing himself in kerosene. He blamed himself and his subordinates for failing to catch the monster with 21 faces. 5 days later, the mystery man sent a letter saying, "Nokaria Yamamoto died like a man, so we decided to give our condolences. We decided to forget about torturing food-making companies. We are bad guys. That means we got more to do other than bullying companies. It's fun to lead a bad man's life." And just like that, the monster with 21 faces disappeared. A few years later, the police would end up following 28,300 tips and investigating 125,000 people, and the cases ended up cold. As to who the monster with 21 faces was remains a mystery, but investigators believe that they may have been connected to the Yakuza mob or North Korean communists. The statutes of limitation ran out for the kidnapping and poisoning in 1995 and 2000. The monster with 21 faces have never been identified.